the webinar, and we recommend that you switch on your video as well to preserve your bandwidth, and also that when you speak, you can switch it on and off again once. And also enter your questions or comments on the chat box at any time during the course of the webinar. We will certainly attend to that or answer the questions or comments. And you can also virtually raise your hand to indicate that you would like to speak, which will give you an opportunity to speak. And please remember to drop off your hands once you are finished speaking. If by any chance you have got questions or inputs or additional question or feedback that you would like that you could not address during the webinar, please use that email, Silas S. Morauzi at SALGA or Lauren, and then we will definitely attend to that. In terms of program, we basically gonna go straight to the presentation, but just before we go to the presentation, I would like us to basically introduce ourselves. Ideally, it would have been good to ask one-on-one to introduce and switch on the video, but it's not gonna work due to the number of the people that has the potential to take too long. But what we're gonna say is that we will appreciate if people can type their name, the organization that they are representing, as well as the email address. The significance of email address is for us to be able to send you the presentations after the webinar. If you do not write the email address, we won't be able to send you the presentation. So it's important that we introduce ourselves, the name, organization, as well as email address. Thank you. Without any further overdue, I will hand over to the presenter, Josh, as well as Tanaka. Thank you very much. Stop sharing. Yeah, you can take over, Tanaka. Thank you.
Thank you, Silas. Please do let me know when my screen is up.
Not yet?
Not yet. Let's see. Any luck now?
Yes, it's okay. Tanaka, it's okay now. We can see it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Silas. Morning, everyone. As Silas mentioned, I am Tanaka, and my colleague Josh and I are going to be presenting to you on different solutions for SSEG and municipal revenues. So for those that we haven't interacted with, we are from Sustainable Energy Africa. That's an NGO that's based here in Cape Town, and we primarily work with local government and cities around implementing renewable energy or sustainable energy solutions. So just a brief agenda for today. We're going to start off with an introduction to the Municipal SSEG Support Program. We're going to explore what exactly small-scale embedded generation is. We're also going to highlight how to set SSEG tariffs, as well as highlight the revenue or potential revenue impact of SSEG using case studies. So starting off with the Municipal SSEG Support Program. So this program has been put together by SALGA, the DMRE, as well as the GIZ, and is currently being facilitated by Sustainable Energy Africa, Sun Cybernetics, Route 63, and the CSIR. And since this SSEG support program started, we have been able to support over 40 different municipalities all over South Africa. And I'm going to just highlight in the next slides what exactly that support is. SSEG support program works is that towards the end of each year, we send out a call for applications to all the different municipalities in South Africa that are within our networks or that we can access to apply to be part of this support program. The deadline is usually towards the end of November. Currently, we do have a call that's out. And our deadline, I think, is the 27th of November. So if after this presentation, any municipality that isn't part of the program would like to be part of the program, you are more than welcome to please drop us an email and we can get in touch with you and send you the required application forms. So after our initial application process, we go through a period of selecting the different municipalities. And during this process, we look at the municipalities that have applied and we see who exactly would benefit the most from our assistance. After our selection, we usually go through a period of initial visits where we go to the municipality, we speak to them, we tell them what exactly the program is about. I mean, it's very easy to misinterpret what exactly it is that we're advertising. But then we speak to them, and more importantly, we try to tell people about the 5-day intensive training. So each year we hold 2 training sessions. One is usually in Gauteng and the other is the Western Cape or the Eastern Cape. And over this 5-day training period, we enable or assist municipalities to develop an SSEG process for their municipality. I'll highlight a little bit more about the 5-day training in the next slide. So during our initial visits, we try to highlight the exact people that need to attend this training. So I think, as most of you are aware, the implementation of SSEG in your municipalities is not just a one-sided process. It's not just about the electricity department, but it involves a whole range of stakeholders. So it involves people that work with policies, people in the finance department, people in the electricity department, energy divisions, if you have them. So we want to have that broad spectrum of people at the training session, and that's what we highlight to people when we go through the initial visits. So after our initial visits, we have the training program, as I mentioned, and after that 5-day intensive training, we continue to give our municipality support. So we don't just provide you with the information that you need and then leave you on your own. We continuously engage with our municipalities. Constantly we call to find out how well the process is going, what hiccups they're facing, what additional assistance they need. We also have a WhatsApp group which contains over 200 participants from different municipalities, and this group is specifically around talking around issues around SSEG. So when people have questions around how to implement within their municipality, they can post them on the group. If there are changes in legislation or policies, we post those on the group. When one of the municipalities is able to get their policy approved, or if they have some great success with their municipality, they're able to share those successes with the group. So it becomes a community of people or a network of people within South Africa that are all trying to implement SSEG. The other support that we have been able to launch this year is around online training. So because of COVID, we've had to change the way we do things, but one great thing that has come out of it is around the specific guided training. And through this training, we've been able to train people around tariffs, so SSEG tariff development. We've also had a training on grid impact studies, and I think beginning next week, we're also going to have a training on bidirectional metering. So this is the type of support that we're able to provide municipalities that are part of our SSEG support program. So as I mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about what exactly you get from the 5-day intensive training. So after that 5-day intensive training, each municipality leaves with a fully customized set of documents. And these are documents that you would be able to use in your SSEG program. And this includes like a policy which outlines what exactly is and is not allowed within your municipality. There's also an application form which customers can use when they are trying to apply for the implementation of SSEG or the construction of SSEG rather. There's also an assessment or control document that municipalities can use to assess whether or not the SSEG system that has been put up is according to spec or according to their requirements. We also have a commissioning report, a metering guide. And then what is specific to today's session is also around tariffs. We provide tariff setting guidance and a revenue impact check to enable tariff proposal for submission to NERSA. So in essence, at the end of each training program, the municipalities that have participated will walk away with a tariff proposal that they can then submit to NERSA for approval. Other documents that municipalities will have are the SACG contract, a bylaw, record-keeping template, grid impact studies guide, and information for the public. Before we get way ahead of ourselves, we do realize that we have a broad range of stakeholders within today's webinar. So we'd like to, first of all, highlight what exactly it is that we mean by small-scale embedded generation, or SSEG. So we're going to just show you a really short video, very interesting video that pretty much encapsulates what SSEG is and what it means within the South African context. And while you're watching the video, please feel free to write down any questions that you might have in the chat, and then we can address them during the question and answer session. So from that, Josh, if you could please play the video. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Great, thank you, Tanaka. So if you, sorry. So I'll start the video, and if things aren't working, if someone can just let me know. Give me one minute. There we go. Cool. Okay, enjoy.
If you drive around many of our South African towns and cities, seeing solar PV generators on house and business rooftops is becoming common. Why is this? What are the implications for electricity distributors, and what does this mean for the future? In this video, we will discuss 1. Global and local trends around renewable energy. 2. The characteristics of the technology being installed by customers on municipal networks. 3. How a municipal distributor can respond to the challenges posed by these new trends. And finally, how municipal revenue impact can be addressed. We will also point to further support and resources available for municipal distributors. We also hope the video helps clarify some of the misunderstandings that customers have, who sometimes can be critical of municipalities around the conditions that are put in place for SSEG. Renewable energy technology is improving, and costs are dropping to the extent that it now provides some of the cheapest energy in the world. All over the world, installations are accelerating, and South Africa is part of this global renewable energy revolution.
At this point, as we stand right now, solar PV is the cheapest form of energy generation as we speak in the world of all different available sources of energy generation, and it's still getting cheaper as the economies of scale are kicking in.
It's inevitable. You cannot really avoid it. It's going to happen either way. So cities have to be innovative. They have to find ways of working with that, because that is the future, really.
So you could see that the solar applications from the city of Johannesburg's perspective are increasing. Actually, it is doubling every year.
The need to respond to climate change has driven the global investment in such clean, low-carbon energy. But renewables are also an important contributor to job creation. At a national level, significant amounts of large-scale renewable wind and solar energy has been included in our official National Electricity Plan, the Integrated Resource Plan, or IRP.
The renewables, we think, is the future for electricity generations.
Small-scale embedded generation, or SSEG, is also taking off. Small scale refers to systems up to 1 megawatt in generation capacity. These systems are installed on the electricity customer's property behind the meter and connected, thus embedded in the network. This trend is driven mainly by rising electricity prices and load shedding. Most SSEG systems being installed in South Africa are solar photovoltaic electricity, or PV SSEG, which is the focus of this video. But keep in mind that the principles discussed here generally apply for all generation, such as wind, hydro, diesel, and others. We now have tens of thousands of PV SSEG systems installed in South Africa, totaling over 400 megawatts. That's a lot of energy, enough to power at least 100,000 households. But is this acceleration of SSEG installations a problem for distributors? No, it need not be. Firstly, let's remember that municipal concerns about growing SSEG numbers are understandable. Since the first power station and distribution network was constructed in South Africa around 1890, power has been flowing one way, from power station to the customer. Technical staff were trained to understand, construct, and operate systems with this one-way flow. SSEG turns all this on its head by installing generators at the customer end of the network.
Only transmission engineers, so engineers planning the network at transmission level, used to worry about generator integration challenges onto the system. So now that is past, even municipal planning engineers now need to start about where generation challenges onto the system.
This video will show why SSEG does not pose a threat to municipal distributors or to human safety, as long as the right requirements and the right tariffs are put in place. However, it is also worth noting that SSEG can definitely be a problem when, firstly, the distributor has no requirement or tariffs in place yet for these installations, or secondly, when SSEG customers or installers disregard municipal distributor requirements. Such illegal installations are the worst outcome from a safety, power quality, and municipal revenue impact point of view. The best approach is to develop processes which allow and encourage customers looking to install SSEG to do so legally and safely.
So unfortunately, where the processes are not in place, the guys that wouldn't follow the rules and processes anyway end up installing systems, whereas guys that do want to do things right according to standards and regulations end up not installing and actually getting stuck. So the municipality ends up getting bad installations that actually happen, whether it's illegal or not, and the good installations actually don't.
It is important for municipalities to have processes to allow SSEG. There's a lot of reasons for that. One of them is for them to be able to monitor how much SSEG is connected into their system, to monitor in terms of the dangers around safety that could come up with having SSEG installations that you don't even know where they are in your networks.
Many municipal distributors have already developed these processes and requirements to accommodate SSEG. They are also developing tariffs to ensure that SSEG customers are still covering their fair share of network costs, so municipal revenue is protected, while at the same time keeping a reasonable business case for the customer. Let's look at the main components of a typical SSEG installation. This is a photovoltaic or PV panel. Each square meter of panels produces about 170 watts of electricity, typically at midday on a sunny day. That's about the power used by a big refrigerator. This is an inverter, which converts the power produced by the PV panels to be compatible with the network power. Here is a battery. Several different types are available on the market, and they can look quite different from each other.
As an example of a solar PV system, here is our office block with 14 kilowatts of solar on the roof. It cost us approximately 150,000 Rand, and the payback period is 4 years. Let's look inside the building to see what's happening right now. We've got some electricity meters which show the real-time generation and consumption. Right now, the solar panels are generating 8.3 kilowatts of electricity. At the same time, the building is only consuming 6.1 kilowatts of electricity. So we're actually exporting 2 kilowatts into the City of Cape Town's grid. We will get compensated for that at the end of the month.
Now, let's look at how these are put together. Here is a very common system configuration. The PV panels generate power when the sun shines, which feeds into the inverter. The inverter changes the power characteristics to feed into the customer wiring and network. The meter is called a bidirectional meter because it can record energy flow from the grid to the customer, as well as export from the customer to the grid. A second configuration includes storage. This is becoming increasingly common as it allows the customer to function when there is load shedding and can provide power when there isn't sunshine. The power from the PV panels feeds the appliances of the customer, as well as charging the batteries for backup power. If there is still extra power from the PV panels, it can be exported to the grid through the bidirectional meter. A third configuration worth knowing about is an off-grid configuration. Here, there is no physical connection between the PV system and the wiring of the customer, which is connected to the network. It is therefore not an embedded generator, so cannot be called an SSEG. Now, let's have a closer look at how typical PV SSEG systems operate. First, we use a house as an example. Often, not much power is used in the middle of the day. For example, if people are away at work. More is used in the evening again. The PV generation is at its maximum in the middle of the day. You can see that for a lot of the day, there is extra PV power. This can then be exported onto the municipal distribution grid or used to charge batteries if they are installed. Another example is a commercial building, like an office or a mall. They typically use a lot of energy during the day. The solar PV system generates during the day, but the energy is all used on the premises. So usually, commercial systems export little or no energy back onto the grid. But note that whether or not an SSEG system exports power, the fact that it is embedded means that it can affect the network and so needs to comply with various technical requirements. What about the money side? Let's look at the customer's perspective and the municipality's perspective. First, the customer. PV SSEG requires a significant capital outlay, so the business case for the SSEG customer or investor is an important consideration. A 3 kilowatt system, typically installed on a residential property, would cost around 75,000 rands and take at least 15 years to pay itself back. A 50 kilowatt system, typically installed on a shop or a small office block, would cost around 750,000 rands and take 4 to 6 years to pay itself back. A large 1 megawatt SSEG system, typically installed on a large mall, would cost around 10 million rand and take around 3.5 years to pay itself back. Residential payback is slower than commercial payback. Why is this? Because households tend to export quite a lot of PV SSEG energy during the day rather than use it themselves. As a customer, it is better financially to use your PV energy generated than to export it to the network. Now for the municipal financial perspective.
Which one's that?
A common concern is that the municipality will lose money if customers install SSEG because they will be buying less units or kilowatt hours from the municipal distributor. Loss of revenue is understandably difficult to accept, but this will only occur if these SSEG customers are on an unsuitable tariff. If you have a suitable tariff, there is no threat to municipal revenue. Simple as that. This has been demonstrated in analysis done in over 30 municipalities from around the country.
SSEG is a new business model for them, so it's not here as the bad guy to the business. So the more they respond positively to it and be more prepared to work with SSEG, the better for the municipalities' revenue collection and alternative revenue streams as well.
How does this work? The basic principle is to ensure that SSEG customers go onto a tariff which has a fixed charge, which adequately recovers the fixed costs of the distributor. Then it doesn't matter how many units they do or don't consume. The municipality still recovers the revenue they need. Keep in mind that the municipality can also use the energy exported from the SSEG customer as a source of revenue. For example, if they credit an SSEG customer with 80 cents per kilowatt hour for exports, they might on-sell this power at 2 rands per kilowatt hour.
I think a couple of years ago, there was that notion that SSEG is taking up, the revenues for municipalities. But I think as time went, municipalities started to understand that this could be a new revenue stream, alternative revenue for municipalities, and this could be a win-win for customers and municipalities as well, in terms of customers being able to even sell back the excess that they have from their SSEGs, and for municipalities to be able to, supply other customers using the excess generation as well.
In summary, remember that tariff setting can protect municipal revenue while also being fair to the customer. We've demonstrated this in working with many municipalities around the country. Badly designed systems can indeed be unsafe and affect the network power quality. Municipalities are correct to be concerned and ensure the proper requirements are put in place and are complied with. Fortunately, standards, specifications, and processes have already been developed to ensure technical soundness of such installations. So the municipal distributor just needs to adopt these and make sure that SSEG customers comply before they are given permission to install. SALGA and the AMEU have endorsed a set of documentation and processes for use by municipal distributors to allow SSEG onto their networks. This SALGA AMEU resource pack, as it has come to be called, draws on years of experience by pioneering municipalities and other experts in the country, and is in line with international best practice. Using this resource pack, municipal distributors can quickly and easily be in a position to allow suitable SSEG systems to be connected to their networks. More than 40 municipalities around the country are already doing this.
SALGA's role in assisting municipalities with SSEG challenges is to make sure that municipalities are well prepared, well capacitated, first to have processes in place to allow the SSEGs, and also to make sure that the technical staff is well prepared and well trained to be able to respond to this new phenomena of SSEG.
Maybe one thing that assisted in the development of SSEG processes would be our interactions with other interested stakeholders, Sustainable Energy Africa, SALGA, AMU. In that way, we were able to look at what other municipalities are doing as well. And then from there, we developed our application forms. And then we also developed the entire standard operating procedures for the city. And then that's where we are right now. We are also watching the space in terms of what other cities are doing in terms of tariffs. You know, what City of Cape Town has done and what others are busy doing. You know, that will assist us in better implementing what we intend to do going forward.
So we hope this video has provided clarity around the following issues. 1, what SSEG is and how it works. 2, that it is a growing trend which all distributors need to respond to. 3, that SSEG can be accommodated onto municipal networks safely and without any adverse effects. 4, that negative revenue impacts can easily be avoided for municipal distributors by setting appropriate tariffs while still being fair to SSEG customers and investors. And 5, how a municipal distributor can relatively quickly set up a process to allow SSEG installations in a safe and legal manner. If you would like further support, you can look on the Municipal SA.
If you don't mind me stopping there, Tanax. Yeah, and Tanax, back to you.
Okay, that should be fine. So I think the protocol is that we will answer the questions in the question and answer session, because I see that there is a hand that is up. Silas, is that fine?
Yes, absolutely. It's okay.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen again. Okay. I hope it's up now. Let's see.
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. Yes, so welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video and you learned from it. I think most of the key elements that we would need to know about SSEG in South African municipalities have actually been covered by that video. But I think for the remainder of the session, we want to now focus on the revenue impact element. And one thing that we did try to emphasize in that is that it is possible for a municipality to have no impact on their revenue, as well as to have a very good business case for customers that are within your jurisdiction. So maybe now you are trying to figure out the how, like how is that possible? How would we achieve that within our municipality? And that's what the remainder of this session is going to focus on. So we're going to start off with our what we call our Seg saw or SSEG saw, because it's a seesaw. But anyway, so one thing that we found from most of the participants to our trainings is that a lot of people emphasize the idea that because a customer installs SSEG on their rooftop, there will be a reduction in sales volume. And I guess that is quite evident. If someone installs SSEG, especially if they're like in a commercial building, they are going to utilize less electricity because they can rely on their PV system, for instance. But the part which people miss is that because your customer is utilizing less electricity from you, you will in essence also purchase less electricity from Eskom. So there's a reduction in your sales volume, and at the same time, there is a reduction in your bulk power purchases. So the green block, and then there's also, on the other hand, there's also the yellow block. The other thing which most of our trainers know is that if an SSEG customer decides to feed back electricity onto the grid, and in that municipality there is an SSEG tariff, then the municipality is obliged to credit or compensate that customer for whatever they feed back. And as a result, most people see that as a loss. So they have to compensate that customer for any PV that they feed back onto the grid. But the thing which people don't realize, which was also mentioned in the video, is that by buying this solar electricity, the municipality could, in essence, also get cheaper electricity that they can sell to their customers. But this is dependent on the tariff that the municipality decides to set. So it's very important that when we develop our tariffs, we put a lot of thought into the types of tariffs that we have. We make comparisons of what we are currently paying Eskom, as well as what we would be paying our SSEG customers. So that's what we're going to focus on for the remainder of this session. So we're going to watch, this is now a very, very short video, which will just highlight how to develop an SSEG tariff. Handing back to Josh.
Thanks, Tanak. You can see we liking our videos lately. But yeah, this is a very short one, and it will give some tangible example of how to set a solar PV tariff. So hope that's working, sound and all.
Solar PV now makes for many customers in South Africa. So it is vital to set fair tariffs for these customers to ensure they remain connected to the grid and to ensure municipal revenue is protected. This video will explain what small-scale embedded generation is. It will show and explain the components that make up a fair solar PV tariff, and it will link you to a website with the resources required to set up an entire SSEG process. Small-scale embedded generation, or SSEG, like solar PV, refers to customers within the distribution network who can generate their own electricity. South Africa is seeing a rapid uptake in SSEG, and it means that customers are able to generate their own electricity, so they purchase less from the municipalities. Let's use an example to show why it's necessary to restructure our tariffs for solar PV customers. Imagine a customer was paying R1 per kilowatt hour or per unit of electricity. Of this R1.50, a portion goes to Eskom for the electricity they provided, a portion goes to the maintenance of the network, a portion goes to admin costs of billing and metering, and a portion goes to subsidize poor households. When all these costs are lumped together in one electricity tariff, it's called bundled electricity pricing. Let's say this customer consumes 500 kilowatt hours per month. Multiplied by R1.50, it means that customer's bill is 750 rands per month. Now that customer installs solar PV and reduces its consumption of municipal electricity to 250 units per month. Multiplied by R1.50, the customer's bill drops to 375 rand per month. This reduced bill means that that customer may not be contributing their fair share to the cost of the municipal network and operations. A sensible SSEG tariff therefore splits the cost of the network into a rands per month or a fixed charge, and the cost of the energy into a cents per kilowatt hour charge. This is known as unbundling your electricity tariffs. The third and final component of an SSEG tariff is the export tariff, and this is the amount that the customer is compensated for electricity that they put onto the grid. The municipality can then resell this electricity. SSEG tariffs should actually incentivize customers to remain connected to the grid. If the customer's business case becomes very unattractive, it will simply drive frustrated customers to invest in off-grid solutions or to simply connect their installations illegally, which would result in even greater municipal revenue loss. Many municipalities have shown that it is indeed possible to strike a balance between municipal revenue protection and compensating the customer, and we're going to show you how. To recap, a typical SSEG customer with solar PV will be put onto a tariff with three components: a fixed charge in rands per month to cover the cost of the network, an energy charge in cents per kilowatt hour to cover the cost of the energy they consume, and an export tariff, also in cents per kilowatt hour, to compensate the customer for the electricity they export. Now that we know the structure of SSEG tariffs, we can look at what the value of these tariffs should be. Cost of supply studies should be the foundation for tariff setting, and tariffs should be set to recover the cost of municipal service. However, in a municipality where a cost of supply study has not recently been done and exact network costs are not known, it can be tricky to set tariffs to cover these costs. So what many municipalities are doing is to keep SSEG customers on the same energy charge as before. They're introducing a fixed charge in the order of 200 to 400 Rand a month to cover the cost of the network. And they're offering an export tariff in the order of Eskom's Megaflex tariff, since this is the avoided cost of purchasing that unit of electricity. Commercial customers are typically already paying a fixed charge in rands per month, which covers the cost of the network. So when these customers install solar PV, all the municipality needs to do is introduce an export tariff to compensate these customers for any electricity they might export onto the grid. Great! So we have covered what small-scale embedded generation is, and we have looked at the three components that make up a solar PV tariff, which can both protect municipal revenue and compensate the customer. Excitingly, solar PV can reduce electricity losses in your municipality. It can contribute to cheaper electricity for all. It puts more energy on the grid, which can reduce load shedding, and it reduces greenhouse gas emissions. We support municipalities in developing the SSEG process.
Okay, there we go. Thanks, everyone. Let me pop my video on. Say hi, I'm Josh. You've just seen me in that presentation. I'm in the video, so I think we're going to sort of wrap up our sharing quite soon. Maybe I thought, or Tanaka and I thought what might be useful at this stage is to just give some case studies to show what actual municipalities are doing and put their names there so that people can see what's happening. So we saw, just to recap, that municipal electricity distributors have these fixed charges and these variable costs. And when customers install small-scale embedded generation and consume less electricity, these fixed costs don't change. So that's why we need to introduce this basic charge or fixed charge, Rand per month charge, to cover this fixed cost. And then we can, this variable cost, which is the Eskom's bulk purchases, while customers will be buying less, this will also decrease with SSEG because they're actually buying less from you. So you need to buy less from Eskom. So that's just because I think many people are in the finance department, so they will know that financial structure. As Tanaka said, I'm not going to go through this slowly, but I'm just going to do it quite quickly. SSEG reduces your sales volume because you're selling less units, but you're also buying less, so there's that decrease in costs. So I think that's important to recognize, is that it's a scale that needs to be balanced. It's not just straight reduction in revenue. So this compensation for feed-in, when they put a unit onto the grid, when people aren't at home during the daytime and they export electricity into the grid, you need to compensate them something for that because you're going to sell that unit onto the next door neighbor. So that can be an opportunity to actually grow your revenue base there. And then this reduction in technical losses, it's smallish, but it can be significant because, so what this means, especially in larger municipalities, where your Eskom intake point is sort of far away from where you sell your unit of electricity. So then obviously on the technical losses along that line, when customers feed into the grid or even just self-consume, you don't have to run the electricity all the way across that line. You can actually just sell it on to the next door neighbor. So the line length is much shorter and technical losses are a function of line length. So there's that reduction in technical losses, which can also be considerable. Okay, so to sort of wrap up our presentation, here are the case study cities. So down here, down the left-hand side, we have normal residential customers. So Metro 1, this is eThekwini, Durban. In Durban, customers pay 171 cents per kilowatt hour. So they're on a flat energy rate, so a bundled energy rate that we called it earlier. When customers install SSEG, they move across to this tariff. This tariff has a 245 Rand fixed charge per month. It's still got that 171 cents per kilowatt hour energy charge, same as before. And then eThekwini offers an export credit of 74 cents per kilowatt hour. So if you feed into the grid, you get compensated 74 cents per kilowatt hour. In the next slide, we're going to look what the revenue impact of that tariff is. Just bear it in mind for now. Metro 2, this is Tshwane, Pretoria. Tshwane's normal residential customers are on an inclining block tariff. First block is 142 cents and it goes up to 195. That's the normal residential customers. When customers install SSEG in Tshwane, they introduce a fixed charge of 160 Rand per month. So there's that basic charge. They're on the same energy charge as before, still an inclining block tariff, and then Tshwane offers an export credit of 10 cents per kilowatt hour. So if you feed into the grid, they give you 10 cents for every unit. The third case study is Intermediary City 1. This is George Municipality. Just to reiterate, if there are people from these municipalities, these are 2019-20 tariffs, so they're a year outdated now, but I think they're very similar this year. So in George, customers pay 176 cents per kilowatt hour flat energy rate. On SSEG, they pay 380 Rand per month, so quite a high fixed charge here. Then they're on a time of use energy rate. So 82 cents is it's summer off peak. So that's in December on a Sunday, they'll pay 82 cents. And then in winter peak, you'll pay up to 325 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's this time of use energy rate and then time of use export rate. So when you feed into the grid, George Municipality also offers you on a time of use basis export credit. So if you feed into the grid on a summer Sunday, you'll get 42 cents. But if you feed into the grid on sort of 7 p.m. on a Monday in August, you'll get 295 cents per kilowatt hour. And I'll give some thoughts on that tariff in the next slide, but just to introduce the tariffs. Then the fourth case study is, I think this is Drakenstein's old tariff. They've changed it substantially now, but it was, they had quite a big fixed charge already for normal residential customers. So you paid 402 Rand per month. And then there was the 154 cents per kilowatt hour energy charge for normal customers. On SSEG, the tariff remained the same, except they introduced an export credit of the same price as the import. So this is what we call sort of net metering. So it's a one-to-one basis. So customers got 154 cents per kilowatt hour when exporting into the grid too. So those are the 4 case studies. And on the next slide, we'll look at, I guess, sorry, that shouldn't say average costs. That should say these tariffs. My apologies for the heading. Made these slides early this morning. So the revenue impact of Metro 1, so if you recall, this was eThekwini, their revenue impact, so this axis says percentage of residential customers with solar PV. So from 0% all the way up to 20% of their residential customers having solar. The revenue impact of that, so up means revenue growth, down means revenue loss. So this municipality is seeing almost no revenue impact when up to 20% of their customers install SSEG, which is really high. Right now, we're probably at somewhere between 0 to 1% of customers having SSEG. So this is far into the future. The other examples are a bit more interesting, so stay tuned. So Metro 2, this was Tshwane. Tshwane sees quite a significant growth in revenue when customers install SSEG. Now, how can this be? How can Tshwane see a growth in revenue when customers install SSEG? And if I come back one slide, it's because over here you see they introduced this fixed charge, but then the export credit is really low. It's only 10 cents. So they're only offering 10 cents when customers when customers feed into the network. Then they can sell that electricity onto the next door neighbor at full price. So again, at 195 cents, they sell it, but they're buying it at 10 cents. So the model shows, wow, you're going to see all this revenue growth, but I'll share some thoughts on that in a moment. For now, let's just assume revenue growth. Intermediary City 2, this was George. They also see quite a growth in revenue. This is quite interesting because they had that high fixed charge. So if I just go back again, that high fixed charge of 380 Rand per month, whereas these are a little bit lower. So here they're seeing quite a growth in revenue when customers install SSEG. So there we go, quite a growth in revenue. I'll give some commentary and some thoughts on these tariffs in a moment. And then the last one, intermediary city 2, this was Drakenstein. Drakenstein actually sees quite a reduction in revenue because they were offering that 1-to-1 net metering. So you get credited the same as what you pay for electricity. So if I come back a moment, just say about all the back and forth, but here you can see they're offering you 154 cents per kilowatt hour when you feed into the grid, which is more than what would have paid Eskom for that same unit. You could have bought it from Eskom for 90 cents, whereas they were getting it from their customers for 154 cents. Why would they want to do that? I'll share some thoughts on that now, just to say Drakenstein has significantly changed the tariff since then. So some thoughts on that. So this bottom line here says a revenue reduction. This says is a very favorable business case for PV. Like Tanaka mentioned in the video, we've got to consider the customer and the municipality's revenue. We've got to consider them both. So what this is saying is this reduction in revenue, there's a very favorable business case for PV because they're getting this high export credit. So while there's this revenue negative for the municipality put this tariff in place to say, we want to encourage solar PV. We want to stimulate the industry. We want to create jobs in our municipality. We want to see a growth in solar. So they said that small revenue loss, which is if 20% of their customers install SSEG, it's only around 5%. So remember, 20% is really high. A lot of customers installing SSEG, 5% revenue loss. If people on the call can just think of what the non-technical losses are in your municipality, it's likely in the order of 10 to 20% revenue loss every year ongoing. Whereas this is saying 20% of people install SSEG, you'll see a 5% reduction in revenue. So just to give it some scale, they said it's worthwhile for them. They're happy to take that revenue loss. They want to stimulate the industry. Up here, it's a little bit different. Up here, we saw Tshwane and George seeing a growth in revenue, and this can result in an unfavorable business case for PV, but revenue positive for the municipality. So Tshwane and George are actually a little bit different. Tshwane up here offering 10 cents for export, and what we expect to see there is customers not registering their systems because there's no real incentive for them to register and be put onto that 10 cents export credit because it's not really beneficial to them. So we expect more illegal installations in sort of places that don't offer an unfavorable that offer an unfavorable business case for PV. George is a little bit different because they've got that high fixed charge, but they offer that time of use import and export credit. So customers see the time of use export credit, which was R2.95 if you put electricity into the grid in winter peak. Thinking, wow, that's so kind. We're going to jump onto that tariff and see if we can get that R2.95, not knowing that solar PV doesn't generate electricity during winter peak, obviously. So this is a really forward-looking and innovative tariff because it's time of use and it's preparing for battery storage. It's saying if customers can install wind turbines and feed into the grid during winter peak, let's have it. Let's let the market do its thing. So this is a very cost-reflective tariff. But it's and reasonably favorable, not as favorable for PV. Anyway, I don't mean to harp on for too long, but if you didn't guess, then what we recommend is municipalities strike this balance in the middle, what eThekwini's done, where SSEG tariffs can be revenue neutral. So it doesn't affect your revenue when customers install SSEG because you've got the fixed charge in place that covers your fixed costs. So Tshwane's got that 245 Rand fixed cost in place. And the export credit is 74 cents, which is similar to what they were paying Eskom for electricity. So whether they're getting electricity from the SSEG customers or they're getting it from Eskom, it doesn't really impact the municipality's revenue. And on this tariff, coincidentally, the business case for SSEG can also be reasonable. So here in eThekwini, customers have sort of a 7-8 year, what we call payback period, where they pay the system back. And considering that systems last 20 years, that's considered fair to some customers. They're happy to pay that. They want the green electricity. They want solar on their roof. So this is what we're trying to say, that you can see a neutral revenue impact if you strike the right tariffs. So I think that's the end of my presentation. To summarize, sensible residential SSEG tariffs. The key principle is cost reflectivity. So we want to have these cost reflective tariffs. And as we said in the video, in the absence of a cost of supply study, so ideally this is informed by a cost of supply study, but if you don't have one, we highly recommend getting one. But in the meantime, these are sensible tariffs to put in place. A fixed charge in the order of 200 to 400 Rand per month, similar to what eThekwini had. Energy charge, which is the same as before, it's just easier, it minimizes the admin of changing and updating the billing system. And an export tariff, which equals avoided costs, so which equals what you would have paid Eskom for that unit of electricity, so somewhere in the order of 60 to 80 cents per kilowatt hour. I think that's all from me. This is our SSEG Municipal Resource Portal, www.sseg.org.za. On here, there's a button up top here that says join the program. And then we've got this online training website, which Tanaka mentioned. It's training.sseg.org.za. And we've got a tariffs and revenue impact training with quizzes and videos. So feel free to go create an account over there. And there's the summary of the different resources. So thank you so much. That's from us. That's Sustainable Energy Africa. Hope you've enjoyed it. And I see we've gone a little bit over time. So sorry about that, Lauren. Hope it was worthwhile. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Josh. That was really detailed and yet also quite simple to follow. So I hope everyone else also experienced it like that. So thank you to Josh and Tanaka for that comprehensive download of information. And also welcome to Mark, who's also joined us on the call from SEA. What I'd like to do now is to invite everybody to share their questions. If you'd like, you could share your question in the chat, but we also would invite you to ask your questions. We already have one question from Lisa Jennings, my old colleague. Hello. I was wondering if you'd like to put your question that you loaded in the chats to Josh and his team.
Hi, Lauren. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I was just wondering, with COVID and with a lot more people working from home, and that looking like it's going to be more of a future trend with people working from home and less office-based, if that's going to have any positive or negative impact on kind of the business case for SSEG, you know, with the people not using when in the middle of the day, but now if they're at home, they probably will. So I'm just wondering if that's being looked at, or if that's something that's being considered. It would be interesting to see something. Yeah.
Thanks, Lisa. Josh and Tanaka, can I hand that over to you?
Sure, I've just popped my video on, so happy to share my thoughts. That's an interesting question, Lisa, and I think you make a good point. I think it will, for residential customers, increase the amount of electricity that they use during the day, because the typical sort of household goes to work when the sun comes up, and then electricity demand is quite low. So it could sort of increase their daytime electricity demand, which should offer sort of or create a more favorable business case for SEG. So that's actually a very good point that I hadn't considered. I don't think it changed sort of the tariff setting principles at all, but it could just increase the uptake of SSEG over the next sort of year or two. And we're already seeing a really rapid uptake, which gets stimulated whenever there's a spout of load shedding. So I think it's just all the more reason for municipalities to get a tariff in place that protects their revenue. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Josh. There's a question here also from Themba Mosompa. Would you like to ask your question?
Thank you. Mine was just, for instance, looking at the examples, for instance, given. It is obvious that those case studies are for metros and, for instance, intermediary municipalities where you've got enough customers. For a rural municipality, for instance, let's say either Thembelihle, I can see from the presentation that at least Thembelihle is part of, for instance, the municipalities that SALGA and the team is helping. How, for instance, if they've already started implementing this SSEG, for instance, on their network, how is it impacting their, for instance, the revenue? We are aware that, for instance, for other municipalities, they're very clever, especially Tshwane. They are in the business of, for instance, selling electricity. Why will I, for instance, give people, for instance, more, as they're selling it for 10 cents export to from the customers. But for rural municipalities, how is it impacting them? Especially Tembelife, because I can see it's part of them, even if it's not Tembelife, but the rural municipalities where we know that what we call the household numbers are very, very, very limited, around about 10,000, even less.
Thanks, Temba. Josh, over to you.
I can jump in again. And thanks, Temba. That was, yeah, interesting question. We actually had a colleague of yours from Tembelife at a SSEG training in March this year. And we were designing tariffs with her. Her name slipped my mind, but it was really interesting. As you say, there was only rural households and then sort of one or two commercial customers in the town. And so it was a little bit more tricky. But I think the sort of bottom line principle of if your tariffs are cost reflective, if that fixed charge covers the fixed costs, which could be a little bit higher in a rural municipality, but as long as your fixed charge covers the fixed costs, then the municipality can be protected against any revenue loss. So we did that exercise with her, and I can dig up the tariffs that we designed in the end. I don't know if she's brought it back to the municipality, but it was an interesting exercise, but it was fine. I think many rural municipalities have gotten SSEG tariffs in place. Yeah, thank you.
Great, we have...
Sorry, can I just add on that? I think, yes, definitely rural municipalities will be very different from cities. I think a key consideration in that is also in terms of affordability. So how many residential customers or commercial customers within those rural municipalities would actually be able to afford SSEG. So that's something that we would need to consider and think about. So maybe the penetration of SSEG within those municipalities probably won't be very high unless there's some form of a subsidy or some incentive that helps that growth. So that's just something to think about as well.
Thank you. There's another question here from Silence. Can I ask you to ask your question?
Lauren, I think that's a question from Silent on the chat box. It's a bit of a long question. Maybe Silent, do you want to summarize it for Josh to answer?
Yeah, and we can also just connect afterwards to give you a more detailed response if that's required.
I had a quick read of Silent's question. Thanks, Silent. He's asking about a customer installing a battery storage with the solar PV system and whether that is SSEG and how to handle that system. So the amount of systems that are customers that are installing battery storage with solar PV is growing rapidly because the battery storage is getting sort of much cheaper, has become much cheaper lately and much more affordable. So Silent, it's definitely still considered an SSEG system, even if they don't feed back into the network. If the customer is connected to your network, then the SSEG system will still impact your network. Like they will have a reduced demand during the daytime and maybe increased demand during the evening. So we can help you work on your requirements document, your SSEG policy, to make sure that it does consider or include hybrid systems. Cape Town has done that, and they have been working with hybrid systems for a while, so we can learn from what they have done, Silent. But yeah, we recommend they still be put onto the SSEG tariff with that basic charge that covers your fixed costs, because it's still an SSEG system. So I hope that covers your question, Silent, and happy to engage more offline.
Great. We also have another input from Silas as well to respond to that issue. And then I do see the hands that were up and went down. I'll try to find you again. Oh, I see. Okay. I can see your hands. I'll get to you in 1 minute. Silas, would you like to make an input?
Yes, yeah, thanks, Lauren. Yes, what I wanted to say is in reference to the previous workshop where the concern was raised regarding the SSG impact on the municipal revenue. Wanted also to highlight that to Beck in particular, that as you have seen from Josh's presentation, that indeed the negative revenue impact can be mitigated with proper tariff structure. And also to confirm from other municipalities that if there is any question around or uncertainties around tariff insofar as the revenue is concerned, please by all means raise it in this platform before we close, because it is spotted. It is the purpose of this workshop to clarify all the issues around SSG tariffs. Thank you.
Thank you, Silas. And then I see Beggy Chawe. Would you like to make an input or ask a question?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. It will seem to me that to get a very good tariff, which speaks to what you want to do, you must strike a very good balance in terms of your network, availability of network, or what you call now the availability of network charge or the standard charge, and your export charge. That is my understanding from what Josh was presenting. But it will also seem to me also, Chairperson, that if you do not have a tariff, a Seg tariff, then obviously we won't have a export charge. And if you miss also that factor, then you'll be running your business at a loss. One would wanted to see the other municipality, not George, the other one which has got a negative. One would wanted to say that they are running the business at loss, but Josh qualified it by saying it. They're not looking at it that way. They're looking at a longer run to say they're creating job and what have you in their municipalities, which is also boosting the GDP of the municipality. But if in a municipality whereby there's no Seg tariff structure, the element or the factor of export is inexistent. Therefore, one would say they are running their business at a loss. Am I correct?
Great, thank you for that. Josh, would you like to respond, or Tanaka?
Sure, Becky. I think you're right. The SSEG tariffs are very important to protect revenue, so it's encouraged that you put one in place. But just to what you were saying is that the export credit is less important to protect revenue than the fixed charge, the basic charge. So that fixed rand per month charge is what essentially protects the municipality's revenue. So perhaps you have a tariff, one of your tariffs that already has a basic charge in place. What you could do in the meantime is put customers onto that tariff with a basic charge to minimize your revenue loss. But we also do encourage you to apply to NERSA ASAP as soon as possible and put an SSEG tariff in place so that you can encourage customers to feed into the grid and compensate them for that. So yeah, Becky, I hope that answers your question.
Becky, are you happy with that answer? You can also, please, just a reminder to everybody that you can send additional questions.
I'm covered. Thank you very much.
You're covered. Okay, great. Please do note that you can send additional questions through to us, and we'll make sure to respond to those questions and to share the answers with everybody in attendance as well. Could I invite Lucas to ask your question?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I just have a short question that might perhaps be a bit too technical. It's more technical than financial. It's regarding power factor and SSEG. The current guidelines allow us only to have a unity power factor, or not allow, it's suggested for unity power factor installations. And we have had occurrences where industrial customers, they're actually exporting real power back into the grid, but they're still using reactive power from the grid. So obviously the Sseg tariff doesn't allow for reactive energy charges. I just want comments if this is a minor problem. It's a technical problem that we can solve using tariffs, although it doesn't happen overnight. But yeah, I just want to have some comment on customers that they're basically not paying.
That sounds interesting because I think I understand your question. I've heard of this case in George. I mean, I think it's a first, and I think you guys are one of the most advanced municipalities with regard to Sseg tariffs. So we'll leave it to you guys to figure out, and we'll follow your lead. No, I'm teasing. I think what you could do is maybe put a reactive energy charge in place to charge that customer for that. But it would be a first, and I think it would be something that we can definitely bring into discussions with advanced municipalities, because these are the types of things that we'll need to figure out as we go along. But I mean, what it sounds like to me, I don't know if others have thoughts about that, is to put a reactive energy charge in place. So you're still charging the customer for the kVARs that they're consuming, even if they're exporting real power. I think that would be my initial suggestion. But let's keep that example in mind and work with it. Thanks, Lucas. We'll definitely be in touch with you guys and try and figure something out for that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Barney, can I invite you to ask your question?
Okay, thanks. My question is around the municipality actually getting ready to get this customer built. So the meters obviously needs to be replaced when you want to actually measure the customer's export into the grid if you don't have, smart meters. So the bill, is that now footed by the customer, or how do the municipality actually convert these meters? The other thing is, now that the customer becomes a generator, is there a requirement from NERSA to actually register the customer with NERSA, or how do you deal with that aspect?
Hi, Barney. Thank you for your question. In terms of the meter requirements, I think it depends on the municipalities, but what we've seen is that predominantly the cost of purchasing the meter sits with the customer, so they would need to pay for that. And then in terms of NERSA registration, I think if it's an Sseg system, which is less than 1 megawatt, the customer just needs to make sure that their system is registered with the municipality. So not with NERSA directly, but with the municipality.
Sorry, can I jump in quick, Lauren?
Please, go for it. Hi,
Yeah.
Mark.
Yeah, so Tanaka is quite correct about the registration, except there's been a very recent, in the last couple of months, there's been a new Electricity Regulation Act Schedule 2, which is the licensing exemption. And that talks about when you need to register, when you need to get a license, etc. So above 1 megawatt is a license, that's clear. But they are also saying now from 100 kVA to 1 megawatt, you need to register with NERSA. So every system needs to register with the municipality. But now you also need to register if you are above 100 and up to 1 megawatt. And the NERSA registration process is quite a long-winded one, but that is the addition from what Tanaka said in the latest Schedule 2, Electricity Regulation Act Schedule 2. So it complicates things a little bit. The administration, the pre-installation approvals, etc., and admin take quite a lot longer because of that registration, if you happen to be in the category of between 100 and 1 megawatt. But that's the way NERSA has framed it at the moment.
Great. Are there any final questions for our presenters? There was one question that was sent to me offline, so I just added to the conversation now, and that was around people's customers' reluctance or openness to pay these fixed costs. There have been some studies done recently by WWF and the Center for Sustainable and Renewable Energy at Stellenbosch that did indicate that there was some resistance from residential consumers to paying the fixed cost. So we were just wondering, in your interactions with energy users and with municipalities, what your perception is on that issue.
In and respond to that, Josh. Again, hello, Lauren. Thanks. That is a very good question, and it's of course a big concern. I think there's been quite a few examples to sort of learn from, especially when municipalities bring in fixed charges for non-SSEG customers. There's definitely been resistance to that. So for normal customers to introduce a monthly charge when they haven't done anything different, I think there's a perception that customers don't understand that. Cape Town has managed to pull it off recently. They put that sort of 150 Rand fixed charge onto every customer's rates bill. So they had some resistance, but I think it seems to be working fine. But in terms of the SSEG tariffs, when customers install SSEG, there's a reasonable understanding that things are a little bit different, and it's sort of an opportune time to introduce that fixed charge, like when they do install SSEG. Though Cape Town has a few different tariffs, they offer sort of one with a very high fixed charge and a very high export credit. So you pay a lot per month, but then they offer you a really generous export credit. So that's the way they've tried to sort of overcome that. This year, they've introduced this sort of an investment incentive. So they offer you 25 cents per kilowatt hour extra on top of the export credits for the first year, to try and incentivize customers to connect and feed into the grid. So that's an idea. One really innovative sort of fixed charge example has come out of eThekwini this year, and what they've done is they've made a fixed charge that's based on the inverter size. So so customers pay something like 50 Rand per kVA installed. So if a customer installs a 2 kVA SSEG system, then they'll pay 100 Rand per month. If they install a 4 kVA system, they'll pay 4 times 50, so 200 Rand per month. So that's sort of a sliding scale to increase the fixed charge the more SSEG you install. So that's a really innovative way of doing it. And I think we'll see what customers' response to that is. So it is a challenge. And I think what's really key is for municipalities to communicate why there's a need to introduce that basic charge. So to show that some costs are fixed and that they don't reduce when customers reduce their consumption. So there's this need to install that fixed charge. I think if we can communicate that clearly, then it shouldn't be a problem. But if you just whack it onto customers' bill without explaining why, then there is a real resistance to it. So I agree with you that it is a huge challenge, and it is the sort of foundation of revenue neutrality with SSEG. So I think municipalities do need to pay attention to doing that in a nuanced way and communicating it clearly and that sort of thing. So completely agree with you, Lauren. Yeah. Don't know if others have thoughts on how to do that effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. So time has flown by, and it's already 10:20. So at this stage, I would invite everybody, if you still have some questions to ask, please can you drop them in the chat. There's a message here from Mark, just to clarify that the ERA Schedule 2 only requires from 100 kVA to 1 megawatt to be registered. There was some a confusion about that in the chat. If you do have any additional questions, we will absolutely endeavor to get them answered and to make sure that everybody has access to those answers. again, if I could remind everybody to please share your email in the chat so that we can share the presentation as well as a summary and some links to pertinent resources with you after this webinar. At this stage, I'd also like to remind everybody that this is part of an ongoing series of webinars which really seek to unpack conceptual and practical challenges regarding the just transition to a low carbon economy in South Africa, specifically at the level of local government. So I would like to thank very much our presenters, Tanaka and Josh, and also Mark and SEA for bringing this SEA contribution to the webinar series. Our next webinar is going to be focused on different options for service delivery to low-income households, and the impact of those options on municipalities broadly. And we will be doing that with reference to a case study as well. And I believe that will be the city of Cape Town. I speak under correction, however. So without further ado, I would like to thank everybody for joining us. And at this stage, I will hand back over to the SALGA team to close for us. So thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Lauren, and thanks all the participants as well as the speakers. Indeed, it is true that the move away from centralized grid supply is a significant step to the sustainable energy. And we wish to thank you all for your participation, and we look forward to see you in the next webinar, as Lauren said. And it is true that municipalities are well positioned to drive the sustainable local energy transition. Hence, this SSEG webinars is one way to unlock the potential and clarify issues that colleagues in the municipalities and private sectors are not so sure of. Two things that I also want to mention in closing, that reminder about the SSEG third call, as Tanaka said, that the closing date is 27 November. Municipalities are still encouraged to apply. And also the fact that we intend to have a webinar on the 3rd of November, which you will definitely receive an invitation. It's about the amended electricity regulations on new generation capacity, issues around the roadmap as well as the flowchart for municipalities to apply to procure new generation capacity from the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy. But in any case, more information will be sent to you in due course. Otherwise, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye. A reminder about colleagues from Sustainable Energy Africa, if you can remain on the call, as well as Lauren. Thanks. Colleagues, not sure if we can debrief. I see we still have a few more colleagues that are still on the calls from different municipalities.
We do, but you should be able to move them into the waiting room, or perhaps Melu has the ability to do that.
I think Josh can do that. Maybe
yeah,
too.
Josh as the organizer. I think. Let me see. Let me give it a try with one of the people. No, I can't. I think only Josh has got the.
Yeah. Here we go.
But I see a question from Yanni. Yeah, I think he's still on the call, or he's just left. It could have been something that we would have discussed. Okay, not a problem.
Is there a way of exporting on Microsoft Teams, exporting the chat?
I sort of have copied some of the questions. I've copied some of the questions, but the thing is, with Teams, I think the other thing is we can download the attendances. I think from Josh's side, you can check also if before we all log off, you can check below the chat box if it's possible to download the Excel attendance register. But I've copied the questions here and the names of the bill. Yes.
I captured few comments and questions in this format. Just that it's not many, but this way on the chat box. But the verbal ones, I missed most of them.
Okay. I mean, I think that's fine, Silas. But I think if we can just, so Melu, you say you've got the rest of the